But you learn every step along the way that there's a fork in the road about what you believe. And if you're going to go with yourself, your heart, and what you believe your spirit is guiding you to do, or if you're going to go with what somebody else tells you to do and you be the second opinion instead of the first. And I think you can confront your ego with being the first opinion, check in with yourself about who you are, and if you just go with that, then your ego goes away because you're talking about what you are here to serve.
What a cool turnout.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. So, for those of you who don't know, Blair and I started a podcast called the Her Voice Podcast, and we always do a Her Voice event here at Mammoth, but we thought this year it would be really cool to do a special edition episode of the podcast. So, thank you everybody for being here, and we're just gonna try and keep it as like conversational and
Interactive, accessible. It's the second annual Her Voice roundtable discussion, and we deliberated a lot about who we wanted to have, who we could get here. We're so excited to have you guys. We have Leslie Ann Brandt, who's an amazing actress. Tara Wood, who is the director and producer of QT8, and we just had an amazing Tarantino party and premiere, and it was awesome, and it was such a good documentary. And Anne Heche, which is incredible. I'm like still starstruck. I'm one of my favorites forever. My partner in crime, Alexander Chando. I'm Blair Bomar. This is Stephen Garcia, producer extraordinaire, and someone that's been super supportive of us creating Her Voice. He's a board member of the festival here at Mammoth, and you guys have known each other forever. And
and actually, I think this is we're trying something different. Usually we do all women, but we wanted to bring a man into the conversation because one of the biggest things that I see during panels and discussions is a lot of talk about women and equality and how we can, how we deserve a place in the industry and all of that, and that's all wonderful and true, but let's stop having those conversations and start having conversations about the next steps and who we are as women and how men can help us, and like let's make it equal and bring men in on the conversation. So we're happy to have you.
Well, thank you. Good to be here.
And
yeah, we want to move past the conversation of equality, which I think, most of the other female initiatives out there are. I respect everyone at this table so much, including you, Alex. You've done so many amazing things. I'm on my way too, and so I just want to start off by saying, where do you think your voice is having the most impact? We can start with you, Leslie, or anybody that wants to take it.
Oh, wow.
It's a big first question.
It is a big first question.
Whopper,
In the
throwing it out
bedroom.
there.
I think just, by way of where I come from, so I'm South African born and raised. I was born into apartheid, so I went to segregated schools. I moved to New Zealand, lived there for 12 years, and then I moved to Los Angeles. My perspective in terms of storytelling is always filtered through that lens, So when I think about, for example, my show Lucifer, I play a pansexual demon who's best friends to the devil. So
wow.
Everyone's like,
How'd you prep for that?
Exactly. Like, how do you?
I would love
how
to see
do
that
you prep
breakdown.
for that?
Sexual demon. That's good.
How do you play that? And I said, well, I don't. I just play an immigrant and someone who's different because she's an immigrant from hell. She comes to Earth. Her interactions to humanity is the same sort of feeling of being out of place that I felt when I was 17, going to New Zealand, going like, no one understands my accent. My life up until that point was so different to everyone around me. So how do I connect with people? It's the same thing, the same voice. And then when you parlay that into, well, I'm also a woman of color, and what does that mean? What does that other feel like? Because I have the other in terms of, my sexuality as a character, but then also the visual of like my point of view as a Black woman. that's also very different. But within my show, I know that I have a huge LGBTQ plus following. It's a lot of gay youth, a lot of kids who write me like, I came out and your character's so unapologetic for who she is and her voice, and then that parlays to me personally is I am outspoken and I do speak up for issues, but that is very much informed from my childhood and where I grew up and how I grew up. Politically, just I watched my parents vote for the first time, so it's like I have a different point of view, and I guess just leveraging off of that, I get to tell stories that I think are important.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Wow.
There's a lot.
That's awesome. I think it's so interesting. So you're saying from a young age, you were very confident in your voice and speaking up and being who you are. You didn't sort of second guess yourself.
I had to, because I remember going to class post-apartheid and Nelson Mandela had just been released, and I was one of 2 other kids of color walking into a white classroom. I had to figure out what that, I had to, and then when I look back at it now in retrospect, I feel bad for the teachers, because I'm like, you weren't given any opportunity to prepare for this, what this meant psychologically, as for a country, socially, obviously politically, and they struggled to figure out how to deal with kids who, were raised in these homes with very, very clear lines drawn about who was to have opportunities and who wasn't. And then that changed too when you go to New Zealand and you're like trying to figure out. I'm so grateful for my life, because I have lived all over the world, and I've had to have conversations and explain like even just my ethnicity and my heritage and my makeup, and I have a world perspective, like I really do see myself as a citizen of the world, like not just South Africa, not just adopted Kiwi. I'm married now with a son. So it's like I have to prepare you for what this world is, I know, it's a trip.
It's a trip. Identity and
Yes.
how we create that. And was one of our other questions. Being artists and creators, we deal with our egos a lot, right? And the persona that we can create to the public sometimes matches, sometimes doesn't. And I've certainly, mine's not very large yet, or if ever, but even on a less global scale, when you're relating to other people, there's a front that you put up, that you show to the world. So my question is, how have you struggled with your ego, and when have you felt like it's sort of taken over, and has there been a transformation or a point in your life where you really had to reckon with your ego? Anne?
Are you asking me?
I think I am.
Right now.
I saw the icon.
When I first went to LA as an actress, I had come up off a soap opera, and those aren't very well respected until, of course, you say, "What are you talking about? It's the best training in the world." Then all of a sudden, a person flips their side like, "Oh, yes, it must be." So you learn, first of all, that whatever you say, somebody's going to go along with, because then they become the second opinion. The second thing they started saying about me behind my back that I heard behind closed doors was that I was the white trash Gwyneth Paltrow. And I was like, I don't know if that's a compliment, but I've got a 50-50 shot. So I'll go with that. And I think from then on, I decided I would never read a review, and I have not.
Whoa.
I'm sure all of them are good. But you learn every step along the way that there's a fork in the road about what you believe. And if you're going to go with yourself, your heart, and what you believe your spirit is guiding you to do, or if you're going to go with what somebody else tells you to do, and you be the second opinion instead of the first. And I think you can confront your ego with being the first opinion. Check in with yourself about who you are, and if you just go with that, then your ego goes away, because you're talking about what you are here to serve.
Well said.
All right.
Preach. That was a
very
beautiful answer.
Cheers. I'll see you later. I wrote that one last night.
Tara?
Oh, geez. I actually never had to. I'm new to filmmaking and being there, but the review thing was when I felt it. I was like, and that's where I got like, how do you not understand what I was trying to say there? And I had to step back and go, well, who are they and where are they coming from? And everybody deserves an opinion. So that's the short of that answer.
You don't have to share it.
I think for me, it's a little bit of a different question because I manage a lot of creative people. So producing and putting the projects together, hiring the teams. I deal a little bit more with the ego when it comes to pitching, perhaps, and putting your
Yeah.
creative energies into the scripting or the pitch deck you're preparing. I think I've done a lot of like soul searching on meditation and just mental health and trying to, we work in a crazy business that's kind of undefinable, and we're trying to harness this crazy creative fire that's in us. And a lot of folks, if they don't learn how to corral that a little bit, they could feel lost and maybe go off the rails. So I always try to make sure that our teams know that they have fellow team members, producers, the director has a support system. I think that even editors, need a support system because notes are going to come in. It's inevitable. And we have to work as a team to address those notes for whoever bought the project, whether it's a film, whether it's a television show. And we try to keep in mind that like there's an end goal, which is an audience. But that ego moment does come when the network, who, like you said, who are you? Like, let's say a network executive has no credits, but they came up as an assistant, but have never produced anything. It's a little tough to tell a whole team of really well-known storytellers, hey, the network wants this. And so, of course, you get that initial reaction of, who are they?
feel
Come
that
on, we know.
reaction.
Yeah,
It's
it's
like,
tough
it's
because,
visceral. Yeah.
because that's your work, that's your heart and soul, that's your late nights in that edit or in that script. So I think it's a constant management. I just try to make sure that everybody knows, hey, let's all be aware that this is going to be a thing, but let's work together to try to address the notes as best we can while not sacrificing our creative intent. So it's always a tough one.
I think that's the thing too, is ego can really stunt creativity.
Oh, yeah.
you
Oh,
know,
absolutely.
and close doors, like to yourself almost, because I don't think that you can, like for me in my work, like I wouldn't be able to delve into, where I have to go for this character, or like, if I was thinking about like myself, how I would be perceived. I mean, I feel like actors get checked like every time someone sees action,
Totally.
like a constant criticism
Yeah.
of what they think is the truth in a scene or, but it's good training for life.
It is, yeah. And ego is important to have too, right? To push our careers forward and drive us. And I could be misquoting this, but I think Katharine Hepburn said something about that. Like an actor has to have a good relationship with their ego too. It's like this.
It's like checks and balances,
Yeah.
right?
I'm curious, working with, making a documentary about Quentin Tarantino, and he's got a pretty huge persona and ego, I feel like, that we all love and appreciate in many ways, but goes also in both directions. What has it been like kind of exploring?
Well, I got a lot of questions as to why a female was directing the Quentin Tarantino documentary, which
Why
I never
not?
thought about. Yeah, obviously, because I just did it. But there was points like halfway through where that kind of started. I started to hear that, and then in reviews. So I'm not going to read them anymore. But that challenge, like, I was like, why would that be an issue? But whatever, it's an issue to some people. What I found though
what was
about
the issue? Can you define what
he's
the challenge was?
considered to be a guy's director. This
So
is
they
what I
didn't
found
think that
out
you could
about
see
Quentin,
him
though.
or perceive him.
I guess.
Through the lens of
Yeah.
like a female gaze. That's
Well,
weird.
if you saw the documentary, it's definitely not.
Yeah.
What I found about Quentin is that he's a woman's advocate. He's probably employed more women in front of and behind over his career than any other director. I really want a number on that. And where he comes from is from his history, who he is. Women are important to him, and he just does. It's never on a soapbox. And Quinn has this, who we think he is, like how you just kind of presented him as a big ego and this and that. I don't find him to be that way. I don't. I think he's a super fan of film.
Yeah.
I think he goes crazy when he talks about it. But he's just super confident in who he is as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's misunderstood. I think people choose to make a judgment.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you did such a good job with the documentary and watching. I didn't realize like how it was kind of an overnight thing that happened at Cannes with Reservoir
Oh, yeah.
Dogs, right? And like you were saying, presenting women, just badass women like Uma Thurman and Kill
yeah,
Bill.
his
and-
character. I mean, the female characters that he has. How could he not be an advocate for women? I mean, there's
And I'm
strong
so-
characters.
You know, I've met a lot of women who are like, oh, I saw your documentary. Now I'm going to go watch a Tarantino film.
Interesting.
Like, really? Like, why didn't you before? Oh, I thought it was a guy's film. It's just very male-centric.
So you've
a lot
already
of women
shifted
do
the
that.
consciousness.
There you go.
That's
Well, I hope that's my place.
Well, I mean, I want to go back to that question because we kind of skipped over, but I want to hear the impact that you're making and with your voice, because obviously, as Anne just said, you know, you're already kind of shifting the consciousness of
I certainly
that
hope
view.
so. And finally, it's, you know, we released in December, and that conversation is finally happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I got really scared over the last few months. I was like, oh man, is everybody going to miss that point? Because I think it's huge.
It is
I think
huge.
it's really, it's really important. So it's really nice to be talking about it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, in light of the fact that Harvey Weinstein was just indicted, I wanted
Well,
to
then
ask.
there's that.
Yes, then there's that. Do you feel like the reception of the documentary has changed at all from women and men since that's occurred, or?
I think if they learn that, or pay attention to a woman directed that, that, when the article on October 5th dropped, right? I remember going, yes! Oh no.
You're talking about the Harvey Weinstein article in
The
the
New York
Yorker?
Times article,
Oh,
right? So, you know, the industry knew that he was dangerous and a predator and this and that. I don't think anybody knew he was a serial rapist, right?
Right.
So when that happened, and I'm a woman directing this, I sold to them. Oh, if everybody doesn't know this, they had the rights to the film at the time, to the documentary. I had sold to them. So now I'm in it. I'm in this whole thing. And now I'm defending Tarantino and having to fight to get my film back. And who am I? You know, with
Well-
this like chick from Jersey who like decided to do a Tarantino documentary. Now I have to like fight for what I felt were all these people who came forward and were very open and honest about a director that they love, right? So now I have this whole team behind me that I feel responsible for, and who am I? And this is huge. This is Harvey Weinstein, who finally is being called out for something that I've dealt with my whole life.
Yeah.
So it was personal and professional. It was a lot. Like, I'm starting to shake just thinking.
No, it's super powerful and palpable. I can
And it's
feel
like,
it.
and I won my rights back, and the film did get out, and it's, you know, so it's very empowering. But you don't see that watching the documentary. You have to dig into that and learn what the backstory is.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I'm glad it's coming up.
it's so interesting when we were.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, when we were researching, we were talking about what, you know, like, because you're telling the story behind the storytellers. And I love how you went to the uncomfortable places in your documentary, too, talking about the controversy around Uma Thurman and the accident. And you really answered a lot of questions. You went there, and I left feeling like I had a much deeper understanding of who Quentin was, of who his characters were, that world, how the part it's played in the collective consciousness, which I've loved listening to you. Anne has the most amazing film here right now, Hour of Lead, and it's really, it's cool to watch. It's a mind trip. But you speak a lot about the collective consciousness, and you guys really are pushing it forward in a big way.
I wanted to just touch on the Harvey of it all. You know, I think that the industry's shift, that was a watershed moment for the industry. I think that, I was thinking about that this morning after our conversation, I think last night, about the Harvey of it all. But I think the industry used to be made up of gangsters. It was like these little mini despots who had their fiefdoms, and they ruled with an iron fist, and they got to do whatever the hell they wanted. Now that the corporations are getting involved, the tech companies, Apple, Netflix, you're having to operate, there's not only a light being shown on the bad actors, but there's now new rules being put on anybody who thinks of doing that going forward. And I think it's good to get the gangsters out of the business. Let folks have a safe environment to work in and create in. So I think it's one of many, I guess, first steps to like fixing the overall problems, but
And it feels heavy because
Yeah.
the pendulum has to swing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we have to kind of overcompensate and bring it back. And some people are like, oh no, not the Me Too conversation again. Well, deal with it for a little while so
It's
that
still
we can swing
relevant.
back to normal. Because
Yeah.
we're not
Right.
normal yet.
Well, it's like
Yeah.
there has to be
You
like
know?
the overcorrection.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
In order for it to come
I mean,
back.
we have to take these extra steps that you're referring to, and I think you do as a producer
Yeah.
on your sets.
Yeah, I think with every production I oversee at our company, we always make it a mandate to have mandatory sexual harassment and sensitivity training for any shoot, television, film, whatever it is, short form. So I actually bring in an attorney who's an expert in California state labor law. And I've done some shows with some comedians, I've done some shows with actors. You always have one person on the set, camera guy, grip, gaffer, comedian, whatever it is. You'll have one or two people who are the jokers, who like their dirty jokes and patting each other on the butt, stuff like that. And you'll put them all down in this room where this very nice lawyer will smile and say, okay, guys, today we're going to talk about sexual harassment. Now, what happens is at the top of these meetings, the tone is very like, I guess I can't call you this or that anymore. And by the end of these meetings, those same jokers are like sitting low in their seats like, oh my God. Because the truth of the matter is in California state labor law, if you are, a judge has the ability to award the person who's suing you up to $10 million in punitive damages, and that person is personally liable for that cash. So if somebody on my production is a bad actor and does something terrible, he's not protected by the production. The production will do everything it can to protect themselves. The studio will protect themselves. That person's on an island, and that person is on an island that could cost him 10 million bucks. So you get a little bit of that dose of reality, which, I mean, it's a little bit of a scare tactic, I'll be honest. It's like, just, hey guys, here's the rules, here's the law.
Well, that's the pendulum, right?
Don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
It's like everybody's
Right.
coming here to do work. So we just set the tone so everybody understands the rules.
And I think it's important to send a message to the not just the perpetrators of this behavior, but also people who allow it to happen.
Yeah.
People who don't do anything, but don't do anything
Right.
too.
Well,
you
and
know,
this is what's
and
important about
women
you
are sometimes
being
some of the like for me, I've experienced female producers who just allow shit to happen, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not okay
No,
because
it's
you're
not.
helping
Enabling.
perpetrate this industry that makes people feel unsafe.
Of course, and,
You
and,
know?
and I think a lot of folks don't act because they don't have the systems in place to act. So they don't know
Yes,
how to
good point.
take the step to say, hey, there's been a complaint, please step in. So we make sure that we have a best practices document established with our attorney to say if there is a problem, it goes to the line producer raises it with the HR rep at the studio, whatever the producing studio is. Those people will do an investigation, and this person who's lodged the complaint will be heard.
Exactly,
Like,
because
they
you
have
want to
be
feel
heard.
that if I do have a grievance, if I go to my producer, if I go to my AD, if I go to my studio, my network, that someone will sit down and listen.
Yeah.
And you're
Right.
safe.
And
Yeah.
believe me.
Yeah.
Because not all flirtation is sexual harassment. no?
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's the other
that's
thing
true.
too.
Yep.
That's the other thing too. We have a great fun set on Lucifer. We joke around, you know, and we're able to, like, I am definitely, you know, someone who, I think there should be more women on sets because it just takes care of like any of that bad behavior too, because women can, you know, because women are going like, hey, that's not okay.
Women were some of my worst perpetrators.
Exactly. But
So I am not set just in safety because there's a woman on set.
no, but I feel like if there's
Very
equal, if there's
important.
equal points of view in like a writer's room as far as directing goes, producers, like I do hold women who have allowed this behavior. I've personally had behavior like that directed by a producer's husband in front of my husband, and she didn't say anything, and I'm like, that's not okay. One, it's
Yeah.
unprofessional. Two, like, what the fuck is going on here right now?
And dare I say, systemically, it feels like if I were, evaluating the women who perpetrated wrongs against you, I feel like they were probably not only there weren't systems in place, but also they were victim to the same fiefdoms of these gangsters and afraid of losing their job
Well,
too.
let's not speak globally about why women treat women a certain way.
Sure. I'm just trying to get to the point of they are fearful for reacting, potentially because
I
there's
feel
no
like
systems in
some
place.
women have, especially
Would you
women
not then
now-
say the same about men?
What's that?
Would you not say the same about men then, that they had been mistreated and that's why they would carry on that disease?
Yeah, I've actually experienced mistreatment, and men a lot of times they internalize and bro it out. I always call it broing it out. Like if you have a problem, don't bro it out. Don't just slough it off. Like let's talk about it, bring it up. There's systems in place to do so. So yeah, I apologize for speaking globally about women. I think I was just trying to get
Or
towards
men.
that, or men.
Yeah.
I think I was trying to get to the fact that folks, what I've seen is that folks don't react to those complaints because they're afraid of losing their jobs as well. You know, so there's this like underbelly of fear that everybody's just, hey, you're lucky to be here. You're lucky to be on this production. It's like, we got to do away with that. It's a work environment, you know,
But
and
you
everybody's
can't-
valuable.
You can't, as a woman or man, show up at women's marches being all pro-women, and then when you're in positions of power where you can actually make change and you can actually give women or people, you know, opportunities to progress in their careers or deal with some of these issues like sexual harassment, you can't sit back and like then, you know, be like, oh, well, I don't want to get involved.
Which
Because
is
that
why-
bugs me.
Which is why I like what you two are doing. So you're presenting this, and we're starting to kind of complain a little bit. But so what are we going to do?
Yeah,
Right,
what do we do
Right?
about it?
Like, what are we going to do now? I love what you're doing on your sets.
It's awesome.
I think it sets a great tone.
It's a step.
I think
you
it's a
know.
lot, and I think it's heavy, and I think it's necessary right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and that makes a difference. And men need to be part of the conversation because
Yeah.
women don't exist here by themselves,
Yeah.
being
I mean, studios are still being run by men. So.
and it's systemic. That came up too, right?
Right.
So, what can we do?
Well, I have an idea that what I think is missing is that when we come into these sexual harassment things, which everybody wants to joke about, nobody wants
Right.
to, you know, nobody wants to suck Harvey Weinstein's dick because they chose to.
Right.
Okay, he comes out with a robe and he's naked. You don't want to do it.
Right.
Okay, that's a pervasive action of men, and I've experienced women too, but they're a little bit prettier in their robes. Now listen, we come in and we have these sexual harassment conferences, and you all saw it. And of course, we want to joke, we want to laugh, and sometimes flirtation is freedom. We're open as actors. Everybody you say on your sets are creative people. We want to be open. We want to be free. And then you come into these conferences, and it's rule after rule after rule after rule after rule after rule. Some of them have really funny, like McDonald's jokes as they show the videos, and then they try to make us all laugh while talking about sexual harassment. But the thing that's missing, what I like about what you're saying, is that we don't really sit around and go, how do we make an agreement on this set to be respectful of each other? Why don't we sit around in this community and say what it is, not what I'm going to tell you, because we all know that I shouldn't grab your ass, although sometimes that's fun. So how does this set feel like they're being respected? How can we start with that? How can we agree? Because we're all a crew here together.
Right.
Yeah.
Do we agree that we can go out and have a smoke break sometimes because the cameras are rolling 365 minutes of a day,
Right.
and we don't get that break that somehow allows us a little bit of romance, a little bit of breath, a little bit of freedom? How do we make ourselves feel better? And if I come up to you, am I going to be worried about being sued for $10 million because I told you your eyes are beautiful today?
Yeah.
There are some rules and there are some things in place, and we all know them. And we've all been preached to about them, but we've got to move past preaching and into agreement.
Yeah.
And if we let our sets dictate that for us by conversation, then our females and our males all have a voice, and we get to agree what it is so we can be in the freedom of our sets. And that's what I want to move toward.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think, too, what's so important with what you're saying is having a conversation is like, I think what's with this overcorrection, you do have people now who are living in this fear of like, you know, I love being on a set and having that camaraderie, and then once you start kind of putting those like hard boundaries of like, well, you can't do this, you can't do this, all the good guys, all the good women are like, well, I don't know
Now
how
I
to
can't
act, I don't know
move.
what to do,
Right.
I don't know, you know, and it's happening on sets, it's happening in life. You know,
Fear-driven.
men are nervous to sit next to a woman. I had a guy sit next to me, and he was like, "Do you mind if I sit next to you?"
Yeah.
And it's like, this is insane. You can sit next to me. That's fine. I mean, I think it's like
But
gone
those are the guys
so
you don't
far.
have to worry about.
Right. Yeah.
But the problem is those are the guys that are fearing like I can't even move. I can't be myself.
Yeah.
I know I'm repeating myself, but I'm going to go back to that pendulum. I think we have to just accept that it's going to be uncomfortable for a little while.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
just think it has to be in order to let everybody come back to center.
Recalibrate.
I think it's going
It's
to be very
unlearning a
uncomfortable.
behavior that's been systemic. in,
Change is
like, our
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
Also, we have to try to keep in mind, too, that when you said the mobsters and mafia were running the business, Harvey Weinstein, and by the way, he has become the one, but whatever that group was, both male and female, they aren't taking advantage of Me, I'm a 50-year-old woman. I'm going to kick your fucking ass.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I also am going to walk out of a room with you because you're showing me your dick and I don't want to suck it. But I also have the pleasure of being able to do that because I was sexually abused and I have the power within my body to say that would never happen to me again.
Right.
This is a very good
Not
point.
many women are able to do that. I'm 22 years old and coming out to Hollywood. Men too, by the way, but young boys, they're coming out to Hollywood.
Yeah.
This is my bread and butter. You're telling me I can be in beautiful women? You're going to offer me that role if I choose to do something sexually to you or not? And by the way, that did happen to me. And by the way, I was fired from Beautiful Women. Now, here's Beautiful Girls. Sorry, I'm a woman now, so I take it. I'm going to change that title.
Yes,
Maybe
you are.
remake that movie and make it right. But, and what is happening is that we're starting to look at something that is a group of people who took the idea of abuse, moved it through their bodies some way or another, whether it was happening to them or not. And they took it into the world of their own understanding that they could treat somebody badly. That's a prey, it's a prayer on young people. We are not, what the pendulum is coming toward us, but when a man sits next to us and says, "Can I sit here?" If you're sitting next to a woman who's as confident as I am, I'm going to either say, "Yes, please," or "No, thanks."
Right.
And we're talking about the change in circumstance, which the Me Too movement is helping the pendulum with women who don't have the strength, men, boys, young, who have come, and we're trying to help support them in their innocence of being not able to have that strength because they weren't taught it. And what our consciousness is doing right now is starting to give them some tools. Our responsibility as older adults is to give the tools, make it simple for them to be able to say, "You have this right."
Yeah.
And as older, more wise people, we then have to move the system toward understanding that we are not in necessarily an abusive society and one of love and consciousness, and we can help our younger audiences and human beings, but we can also be strong in our own wise human beings that say we have the right to have fun and play and our freedom too, and that has to do with sexuality and joy and love.
Yeah,
Yep,
totally.
yep. And I think from the top down, you won't bring coming back to like the corporations getting involved in entertainment, taking the power away from those despots. You won't see Tim Cook telling some young actress, "Oh, I need to see you at my hotel room." It just would never happen. The board of directors would never let that happen. So that approach to vetting talent and producer-talent relationships, it's going from this closed door. Hopefully, it's going from this closed door, very scary situation for young women to hopefully a very safe kind of new front. Women aren't being asked to go to the Peninsula Hotel for late night casting sessions anymore. Hopefully.
And let's include young gay male actors
100%.
in this conversation too.
Yeah.
You know,
Important.
because that's also
Not only gay ones.
well,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
You know, like
No
it's-
dividing line here.
Yeah. It's yeah. I mean, for me personally on our set, like I take great pride in making sure that like any of the young actors that are coming through, like, we're a show where sometimes there's background actors dressed, not much, and so like I want to make sure that wardrobe is coming over with, robes and stuff, and that, people feel comfortable, because I remember being, on the set of Spartacus, and my second ever acting job, and there's orgy scenes and people are naked, there's, and I something instinctually, and I do think it's because I'm a South African girl from Cape Town and we're streetwise and we'll fucking kick your ass like you and we will throw down.
I want
But
both of you.
something
If I get in a bar fight, I want both of you next to me.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you do.
I will shank you and watch you bleed out. But the idea of something about that situation, and I remember the costume designer being like, we want to just have your thing drape and your boobs out, and I'm like, well, no, that doesn't make sense. She's like, well, this is Roman times and sexual, and I'm like, yes, but storyline wise, my chastity is preserved for the Roman person. I'm not like having sex in like a bejeweled something. I'm like sneaking in the pantry, having sex with a gladiator behind closed doors. Like, it doesn't actually play into my storyline, and more importantly, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in New Zealand, as a local actor, you're not given a say in that way. Like, we weren't SAG actors at that point. You're fighting for trailers, you're fighting for just a space to prepare. And a lot of times productions will go into other countries and where there aren't unions that protect them in those ways, and like that's where situations will be bad too. I think it's a good thing for me, and I do like have young actors who come through where I go, just, it's okay to say no, and you can talk to your team. And if you're
Yeah.
uncomfortable, find the person who you feel like you can go to, and hopefully it's me on the set or someone else.
Have
where
you, sorry to interrupt, have you had the chance to work with an intimacy coordinator yet? Any
yeah,
of
we
you?
had a really long conversation about intimacy
I did
coordinators.
not.
No, okay.
I did not on that show. But like I said, I was very clear about like, here's my line, and I won't cross it. And I was, I was 27.
You had that resolve. I think, so much of what we're talking about is this issue of safety, and it just in the past few years, hugely. To have a podcast called Her Voice, my voice was always like a thing that I struggled with, and so I felt so much safer to speak out and to be around really strong, formidable human beings that are confident and clear in their vision and purpose. And like what you're talking about, the recalibration, it's just, we have to sit in that uncomfortability for a second to feel the safety, to then find the joy. And it's you're such a badass, and it's so fun to listen to you talk about that. And now the fact that we have intimacy coordinators, like how cool! I would have really. I look forward to working with one. But yeah, I was curious if that had. I know it's kind of new. If any of you had experiences.
I hadn't. The first time I even heard about that, I think, was during the Westworld season 1 kind of debacle. I think the Actors Union was getting complaints. They lodged them to HBO, and Westworld is very, a lot of stark naked human bodies, and production was probably moving quickly and not being the most sensitive to those performers.
Right.
And I think that's the first time I'd heard that term, intimacy coordinators. So I know that they went into the negotiation room and said, okay, we need to do something about this, and brought those folks in. But I've never worked with them before.
I'm way too old. But I did work on a show called Hung with
Oh, yeah?
Thomas Jane.
Oh, yeah.
The movie with
He might be in the
Miracle Hour.
room.
Glad I
He
think
may or may
might
not be here.
But I don't know if you all know, but I was his ex-wife, and he played a male prostitute trying to get me back. That's what I always said. It was a really love story. But anyway, he was a male prostitute. So every week he had to have sexual affairs with all of these different women. And I would see a parade of women come on the set, and they would be sitting in the hair and makeup room going, oh my God, what's going to happen? Like, I have to show my body. Like, Jesus Christ, like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And they're like, go to Ann's trailer. And they were like, what's going to make you feel comfortable? Red Bull and cigarette diet. You didn't do it for the last 2 months. You want to feel comfortable by yourself. Here's a cigarette and drink some Red Bull. Now, why you didn't take care of yourself is your own issue. But what was so surprising is that these girls, when were women, whoever they were, would take the job, and this is what I'm talking about, personal responsibility.
Yes.
You take the job, you know you're gonna get screwed from behind in a bathroom with your legs up after he's ripped your panties off. Now, it's HBO.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which part of you did not think you were going to get naked?
Yes.
And it is not your right to come onto a set and start to complaining about why you can't do
Yes.
it because your ass looks flabby, or because you didn't have the responsibility to be able to take care of it before you arrive on the set, because the other person you're going to be working with has to be equally as vulnerable coming on set with you and having you be comfortable so that you can be partners in telling the story that you've agreed to tell
Yes.
before you arrive. And some of what's happening with this intimacy coordination and everything else, which I totally respect, by the way, but some of it is taking away personal responsibility from the human being who is sitting with another human being across from them saying, please don't talk to me like that, excuse me, nice to meet you, bye, and get your ass up out of there before it becomes uncomfortable. Hello, we can get up and walk away.
Yeah.
Or we can get onto a set knowing what our responsibility is. And I think some of this kind of makes this wishy-washy conversation about this ability, by the way, male or female, to come onto a set and not be able to perform what it is that you said you were going to do.
Yeah. So we were just
So-
talking about this
yeah.
actually, right?
Yeah.
And the being responsible for yourself.
Right.
And understanding the difference between this is your job and this part's not okay.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
This is
But that
out of
part
line.
that is not okay is to be determined by yourself and everybody else before you arrive on a set and you're about ready to go work with another actor, and all of a
So
sudden
you're
you
not
start
holding
complaining.
up production.
It's like, come on, you get there before you get to
Yeah.
set, and if you don't and you're uncomfortable doing that job, then you don't take it, and that is also personal responsibility.
Yeah.
But if you say you're going to do it, it is your responsibility to live up to what that is, and your boundaries are to be taken care of before you arrive at the job that's about to
Yeah.
be done, because you've got a 200-person crew who needs to go home and get to their dinner if they possibly can on Friday night with their family and be able to have a nice sleep
Yeah.
the next day to come to work on Monday feeling thrilled and happy and alive and
Yeah.
rested.
And creative.
I mean, come on, creative.
Exactly.
So don't waste everybody else's time with your
Yes.
complaints. Get to them before you arrive on set.
Yeah.
And I think that's forgotten a lot.
There were actresses on the Spartacus show who showed everything, and they tried to pull it back in the second season. And I'm like, you've established
But this is a problem across the
you've
board.
established your
Interesting.
character, and perhaps, I don't know if you were uncomfortable at the time when you did that initially, but that's what you
precedent.
said to your network and your producers you were
You're in
comfortable
agreement.
with.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what I did was I'm not comfortable right from the beginning. So y'all
Yeah.
figure it out around me or around that, but it doesn't fit in with the storyline. And so there was no other. It was said in the beginning.
What
I
you
never had
posited, you
issues.
wanted to act it out.
Exactly. I never had issues after that. And I think that comes down to that personal responsibility of being like, you have to, is there a balance between, I just want to take the job and I just signed it.
Right.
You as an actor, I mean, we get dressed and makeup done and told where to stand and this is what you say and all this stuff. I'm like, you can't lose yourself as the person in all of that in this business,
I'm curious, I just had a question, I think for both of you, is what advice would you give to younger actors, male and female, who maybe don't have the protections because they're on a short film set, but they do have to explore those tough emotions in a scene? What advice would you give to those young actors to set those boundaries with their creative team?
I think it comes down in the casting process, right? Like right in the beginning of going, what is it that you want out of this character? Like having that conversation, being able to go to the director or the producers, like you say nudity, but what exactly is that? Because I don't want any surprises when I get on set. I'm absolutely there to tell the story truthfully, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page going into this project together. And then for me, I always find the person that I can have those conversations with, be it a man or woman, because I've had to go to men and women at different times as well. And knowing that you can go onto a set, making sure hopefully you have, team or someone representing you, or if you don't, that you have that person that you can have that conversation before you arrive to set, before there's any surprises, before you get into before they yell action.
You have to know yourself.
Exactly. You do have to know yourself.
That's a lot to ask a 20-year-old.
But also what Anne was saying, it's not a secret that there's going to be nudity. If you're auditioning for something, it literally says must be comfortable with nudity. If you're going to be on an HBO show, you know what HBO shows nudity is like. So I think in that regard, you can't really go into it saying you're comfortable with it and then
And you can get specific in your
you can
writer,
get super
too.
specific in your
Giving
writer.
it-
I've gotten super specific. I mean,
You can
Yeah.
say, that's okay, this isn't okay,
Yeah.
that's okay.
And I think
But
my
I think
question is more
that's what's-
directed. Go ahead.
But I think that's what's important too, though, about these intimacy coordinators as kind of acting as a liaison. Not necessarily saying that, you're not taking responsibility for, the job you signed up for, but more like, here's a director who is maybe some older man that a young girl doesn't feel comfortable saying, hey, this is what I feel comfortable with sexually in this scene or whatever. So I feel like an intimacy coordinator is a good way to have a liaison just to feel
Safe space.
Yeah, to create a safer space.
And I think
But I
that's
agree
what
with
we've laid the groundwork for, that everybody knows that people are in place, the safety, nobody can harm you, you can always go and complain and everything else. And so we all start our jobs with this deficit of uh-oh, I'm gonna do something wrong. And the director's uh-oh, I can't even talk about that. And what we focused on is, we're looking at this little area called sexuality and nudity, and it's so boring because it has nothing to do with our characters. And what we've forgotten is this joy of hey, let me sit down with the director and go, now listen, I get it, I can show my tits, but here's the deal. What are we looking at? What have we maybe I only have 2 scenes, but by the second scene, Joe is going to touch my nipple, and I'm just wondering, is there a fun way to get there? What are you looking at? And if it's fun for me, cool, because I already agreed to do the job. But is there a way that we can set up the first scene that would be a little bit more fun, maybe a little bit more sexy, so that by the time my tank top comes off, it's a little bit. Can we have some fun? Engaging in what this is. We're a sexual culture. We're a fun culture. We've lost all this fun. We're oh my God, we have to be so covered up. That's also part of the pendulum's got to go a whole different way. I understand that. But why in the Roman times are we not walking around in bikinis feeling celebratory of each other going, right, oh, this set is hot. But that's, I'm a different kind of intimacy coordinator.
I think you found
There's some agreements that we have lost, the power and the joy and of getting
Playfulness.
together with people who make us feel safe and saying, what are we going to do with this and what are we maybe going for the arc and what's the most fun way to do this, since we are looking at it, and it can be any kind of movie you're doing, a drama, comedy, whatever it is. But what that does is alleviate the discomfort in talking about sexuality on a set, or the fear that people have. If we go into it with our responsibility of saying, I want to make this fun, I want to celebrate my body, and I want to
is,
do
how
the
do
job
you-
that I'm here to do.
How do you get a 20-year-old to that point?
Well, they
We
need to
had-
be protected.
Yeah, because I've had instances with a young girl who agreed to it, and she did her job, but she was devastated at the end of it.
But did she sit with that
Interesting.
director in a safe
She wasn't
place?
given that opportunity as a local person who's, a local.
That's what we can start
actor.
encouraging our younger actors to ask
Exactly.
for, and encourage them to do it before they get into these rider
I'll throw
situations.
myself under the bus
And help
here.
them, or even say, hey, I'll help you, I'll sit with you if that would be
Exactly,
fun.
and that's what I did. I
Yeah.
shared my trailer with her,
That's cool.
and I was going up in between takes, taking a robe and covering her when she needed to, because
Wow.
no one else was doing
Yeah.
it. Because they
Wow.
were busy doing their job,
Yeah.
and they weren't considering it was like a body of flesh, and it's
Right.
like
Yeah.
you're being paid. So I'm like, well, I'm going to take that responsibility on, and it's okay, and I want you to feel safe,
You've had a different experience.
What were you going to say,
No,
Tara?
no, no, this is outside. This is taking responsibility, and I made a mistake. And when so I
We all
sold,
have.
Well, I sold the film
Yes.
to the Weinstein Company as a woman,
You didn't know that. You didn't know it was a mistake.
but I did. I knew who he was.
Uh-huh.
He wasn't convicted yet. But everybody knew in the industry, and I still sold to him. So who am I?
Right.
Right?
You're a person who's learning a lesson about taking responsibility,
Yes.
like all of us.
Yes. And now I will. But I was part of the problem.
It's interesting. It's interesting to own them. I mean, what an incredible thing for you to share.
I mean,
Wow.
yes.
Amazing.
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 And it starts at the
Thank
beginning.
you.
Part of the problem.
Amazing. Amazing. That it starts at the beginning with your determination and your agreement, and you knew you were going against yourself and your own responsibility, and then
Yeah.
you're fucking sharing it with us. That's
I'm going to
cool.
push this though. I'm going to ask everybody, now that I've said that, do not work with people that you know have. This is very touchy, because we're not talking about somebody who's been convicted of something and they're known to be guilty.
And by the way, you
Right?
didn't have a personal relationship with him. You had a
No, I did
business
not.
relationship with him. That's different.
it-
Just because
but
Harvey
it's
Weinstein
still-
is the
I
man that
think
he
it's
is
the
doesn't
same,
mean
though.
he doesn't make good movies. That is a very different thing. We don't go, nobody's
But I don't
proven
wanna
guilty.
support that.
But you don't know that. You're not in a personal relationship with that man.
But I think
you
the
don't
industry
know.
did know that.
Well, and that's
Right?
your
Yeah.
own, that's on your, that's why it's so cool that you're sharing that conflict
very
and
cool.
conundrum that you
Fair
had
enough.
with yourself.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But you still don't know until you know, and that's another part of our responsibility
comes
to
back
be
to
clear on what we
responsibility.
know.
Yeah.
Now I
And
do know.
Now you do
moving
know,
forward,
and thanks for
now I
sharing with
know.
us. Because that's cool that you would. It's cool that you would admit that. You don't know until you know, but after
A
you know, you
20-year-old is
can't
not going
unlearn
to
it.
know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they need to
Yeah.
be supported.
Totally.
Younger people need to be supported.
That idea of not knowing until you know. And so much of what we do
And
is.
then you can't unknow once you know it.
Right. And there's that.
You can't unknow what you don't. You can't learn what you don't know.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. You can't wake up the person who's pretending to be asleep. That that thing always drives me nuts. I think about that a lot. But
They're
yeah.
pretending,
Yes.
right? So they can pretend for as long as you want. They're never
Right.
gonna wake up.
Right. God, that's so incredible that you did share that, and it even speaks more to how important your work is, and how important. I mean,
I don't want that to turn back on me. I want everybody to hear that and do that.
yeah, it's
This isn't an ego thing.
no. We all
This is
have
definitely
checks and
like-
balances, and
It again, to make change and to move forward responsibly,
absolutely,
you have to say no to things.
yes,
You know
do.
that
Most
seem
difficult
very
thing.
attractive.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right?
Very
Like,
shiny and
oh,
sparkly.
here's your
exactly.
first job, but you have
Yeah.
to do this,
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's okay, as long as you're okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question that I think everybody struggles with, and I'm interested to hear the different kind of viewpoints. But where has there been a moment in your day, in your career, where you struggle with feeling like you're not enough?
Right now.
All the time. Every day. But I think this is so important, especially like, I feel like as women, it's maybe going to be a little bit different than like what Steven's response would be. I felt not enough a lot on sets or even just like on the day to day, but I think specifically, are there moments where you've just really felt lesser than?
Yeah.
Look, I think everybody's felt that way. Everybody in the whole world. And if they
course.
don't, then they're liars.
Of course.
But I think the one thing about moving forward in consciousness is to be able to have the ability to go, I feel that way, so my feelings are this. But my intellect can come in, we're smart enough now to go, now how am I going to deal with that?
Right.
I can sit here and I can go, I'm not okay, and I can go sit with my girlfriends and get drunk as a skunk going, I'm not okay, and I wasn't okay yesterday, and I wasn't okay the day before, and I'm still not okay, and I wasn't okay in bed with my boyfriend, and I wasn't okay as a child. And we're like, oh, it's this torment of like
Sure.
not okayness. So if we go and can recognize that, like, I'm feeling a little bit less than right now, oh, cool. My intellect can come in and say, you know what, I am, and so is everybody else. And I look at everybody else with the same respect that I look at myself. That is what the reflection is that I'm looking for. And I can take my intellect and go, I'm bright enough to go, even if I'm not good,
Right.
it's who I am. Let's move forward and let me try to move a conversation forward into what could be okay about me, what I do want to offer, what it is that my strengths are, the conversation that I am having, instead of getting caught up in this bulldozer of like, oh, the snowball going down the hill, or are we going back up the lift and going to go, oh, I don't know, I kind of like this view.
Yeah.
I've felt not enough at times juggling a career, being a mother, and a wife, for sure. Like being torn in 3 different directions of, I was pregnant in the 2nd season of my show, and I gave birth, and I remember being so apologetic when I told the producers that I was pregnant, as though it was this horrible. I was like, but I'm not going to skip a beat, and I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to. And I was, and I went back to work 6 weeks after I had him, and I was juggling like the breastfeeding and running from the stage to the trailer and doing, and never feeling, not sleeping, like. And then it's like, this is what I love about our short adult night, because our short, it's funny, but it actually speaks to like a couple trying to discover themselves too, because with that comes not feeling not enough for my husband, where I'm like, I want to be the wife and, and be that, but I'm so fucking tired because I just did a 17-hour day and I've got to get up with the baby at 6:30 and I've got to write my projects and I've got to do this, and somewhere down the line, you're there, honey, and I love you, but I'm just struggling right now to like figure it all out,
Right.
And at times I've definitely felt punished for being a career woman who has a child, where I'm forced to choose, but I'm gradually, like, as my son's 2.5, I'm finding my voice. I'm finding my voice to be able to go to my producers and go, you know what, I'm not going to make that table read today because my son has his, whatever, and I want to be there. So I'm 5 years into the show. I've been riding this stick for 5 years. I know what this character does. Like, I'm good. Excuse my, sorry, kids. But I get it, But I had to find that voice to be able to say that, because I never wanted to be the person that wasn't there, wasn't showing up. I'm like, I can show up. I can show up for my job. The other stuff is important when I can fit it in, and it's okay if I miss a beat, or I don't go for workout, or I don't do a podcast or do some press thing. Like, that's fine. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, it is.
It's fine. Blair and I talk about this all the time, about being women and feeling like we always have to choose, and feeling like, at our ages, how we aren't married with kids, but we're career women, and how do we find the balance, and always feeling like it's this or that. And
Yeah.
I think it's important to like have these conversations to like not feel that way.
Can I just say, when you asked the question, all of us were like, all the time. And you were like,
It's funny. I'm very measured in my
That's the
response.
difference between men and women.
I'm very measured in my response because, I do feel like that on the daily, but I've done a very good job of stuffing that down because my job is to get the thing finished. So it's not an option to not finish the film or not finish the show or the multiple shows we have going on. And I've done a really, I was thinking literally, I really push that down whenever I have that doubt. And I was trying to really find the source of that, and I was thinking, so I'm a poor Mexican kid from Downey. I come from a Mexican family, and coming up in a family of color, you do get those haters who make you feel like you're not enough and you'll never make it, and what do you think, you're bad now because you do movies, you do TV, but the minute you have a hit, hey, I love that show. So I grew up with this air of like Latin toxic masculinity in my family. And it was a lot of bravado, a lot of boisterous men talking about everything they're going to do or everything they did do, and a lot of sibling rivalry with my birth dad and his brother. And it tinged me going forward because I never wanted to talk about what I was going to do. I wanted to show you. And my cousin actually just hit me up recently. He's trying to get into the creative industries. My other cousin, he's a lit manager at Gotham Group. He's doing really well managing writers and directors, and our younger cousin wants to get in. And he's looking on Instagram, and he's trying to see this version. He's trying to like piece together this Lego version of what a man should be because he just doesn't know who he is yet. And I said, stop looking at these self-help things. Stop looking at this. Just show me. Just shut up and show me. If you want to get out there, do it. So I think for me, when I felt like I wasn't enough, it was when I was just getting my feet wet, or when I was just trying to make that jump into entertainment and admit to myself, I'm a creative person, I'm going to go try to be paid to be creative for a living, and I have to put all these haters and these family members who think I ain't shit, and I have to stuff them down. And what's funny is it came full circle. I think at the judges panel a few days ago, I met a young producer. He had come out of the closet recently, and he was trying to ask us, hey, what's the next step? What do I do? And I was trying to cut through the clutter, and I just said, what do you say when somebody asks you what you do? He goes, I don't understand. I said, hi, nice to meet you. What do you do for a living? And he was very hesitant to say producer. Very hesitant.
I'm hesitant to say producer.
And that's what's funny about our business is there comes with a certain like sleaziness to it.
Yes.
And so you're a little like, oh, I'm a producer, but I'm not one of those producers. So with this young man in particular, he was called by a well-known actor because that actor had heard he produces shorts, and he called him and said, I need help. I have this amount of money. I have 2 weeks. Help me. And he produced it in 2 weeks. I said, you're a producer.
Nice.
People called you to produce something. You did it. You took a readable something and turned it into a watchable something in 2 weeks. So you've got to admit that to yourself. So for me, I feel it daily, but I've done a very good job of pushing it down. But it does come from like that toxic masculinity growing up.
And that's actually sounds like a description of being responsible for success. We keep talking about being responsible for the flip side of that. But then the other side is just as important, isn't it?
Yeah. 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 I think
It's
so.
interesting, actually.
It's being honest with yourself, and I think, and you've definitely hit on that point, is like knowing yourself, trying to know yourself. It's hard to do in this business because there is no, you'll ask all of us, we all have different paths of how we got into the business. So I think you got to be reflective and just understand that being a creative person in this industry, you're going to have to be reflective, introspective, and understand your own mental health.
Yep. You're going to meet your beast in your basement. You got to shake hands with him or her.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Yes.
Yeah.
That idea that we're enough just not doing it.
Yeah,
anything
just being.
is really powerful. It's so hard to remember sometimes. So we have a question that we like to ask everybody at the end of these podcast episodes, and it is, do you want to do it?
What legacy would you like your voice to leave behind?
Serving the truth.
Yeah.
You bitch.
And doing it with joy.
Come on, Tara. What she said?
And having good sex. And living in love.
It's so true, though. It's so true. I mean, all right, I'll add to it.
Please.
it's going to sound so lame now. I guess being responsible for myself.
Beautiful.
Well, as a filmmaker, is that what this is?
Yeah, or however.
As a human.
As a human being, as a filmmaker, both.
Yeah.
That's a big question.
It's a really
That's an
big
ego
question.
Not really.
You don't think so?
I don't
Can
think
go
so.
both ways.
All right, to move this along, I really do want to be respected as being honest and truthful. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever part of my life that's in.
Yeah.
There we go.
Couple things for me. Telling stories that mean something to someone, even if it's in the smallest way. And for kids back home in Cape Town, South Africa, who grew up the way I did, to know that, like, people want to hear your point of view. People want to hear your voice. Your dreams are valid. And you can take up space.
Nice.
Take up space. Yes.
I think on that note too, it's about the kids, the younger version of me who doesn't even understand what a grip or gaffer does because that industry isn't exposed to them, and they're in South LA, which is 20 minutes from downtown and 30 minutes from 40 minutes from Hollywood. But yeah, I'd like to make sure that I leave a message to the younger generation coming up that you can break into this industry, you can make lasting relationships, you can champion other creative people without losing any sense of yourself. I feel like when I was coming up, there was a lot of, it was the early 2000s, there was a lot of like Ari Gold mentality and hate, and that's dying, thank God. I mean, I hate to use the word, I'm still a millennial. So I think the younger group that's coming up, they love sharing, they love community, they love social interaction. And no longer is the process of filmmaking kept this dark, mysterious secret that you got to sell your soul to see all the secrets of how we make this stuff. Now it's all over Instagram, it's all over YouTube. People are saying, hey, I'm a creator, you are a creator, take a look at my video, I'll go support your video. So I want to perpetuate that to the younger kids in South LA to say, you can do it too.
Yeah.
Love that.
Well,
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you so much. We're so honored. Yes. I mean, we had such a cool turnout here with everybody at the festival. It's so awesome to have you here. I'm Blair Bomar.
I'm Alexandra Chando, and also we would like to thank our sponsor today, Radio
yes.
Drama Network.
Yes.
This podcast has been presented by them, so thank you to them, and thank you to everybody.
Thank you.